AM 630. WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman on the phone. The chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus, joins us now. How are you doing today, Mr. Priebus?
I am doing great. It's a good morning, and I hope you two are doing well as well.
We are, and happy to have you. Okay. There seems to be, I detect it. I want to know what you see out there. There's starting to be what seems to be a little traction. I mean, this thing has been locked in, and it's not been, the needle's not been moving a whole lot, but I sense a little bit of traction as the Romney folks go after President Obama for this "you didn't build that" comments. What do you think?
Well, absolutely, and I think if you kind of put a few things together with this president, one, a month ago he said that the private sector is doing fine. You look at the two major pieces of legislation that he's really championed, and that's the stimulus, and then of course the Obamacare legislation. I mean, it really is a government-centered viewpoint, and I tell you, there's another piece of this that hasn't really broke out yet, but I think it's going to, which is this idea that Obama seems to have a problem with the American dream. And now we can talk about this, all night long and argue it out, but the reality is either he has a problem with the American dream or he's willing to run against the idea of making it in this country in order to appeal to envy and division in order to win an election. When my parents, when I grew up, and I bet almost every person listening to this agrees with me, even if you're a Democrat, you agree with me on this. When we saw the big, house on the corner, or the neighbor that got the brand new car, my parents didn't point at those people and say, "Look at those lousy people." They looked at me and said, "Listen, pal, if you go to school and you work hard, you're going to get that car, and we want you to be in that house, and if you work really hard, you're going to be in a bigger house." That's what every parent wants for their kids. So I think what we're going to see here, and what I believe is really going to be on the ballot, is whether or not people in this country still believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can live the American dream, or you can keep going down this Obama big government, cradle-to-grave, life of Julia path. I don't think that's where we want to go, and I think it's going to be a theme. I think it's an important one.
We're talking with Reince Priebus, who's chairman of the RNC. So I know everybody looks at the polls, and we certainly follow them closely around here. Are you, and most of them show it's pretty much a dead heat, are you happy with where the polls are right now, this far away from the election?
I'd be happier if we were 5 points ahead, but I'm happy with where we're at. I mean, I really do think that if you were to say a year ago that we'd have a Republican National Committee and a candidate that have more money in the bank now than Obama and the DNC, and we've got a candidate that's in the margin of error, slightly ahead or slightly behind, I think most Republicans say, wow, we'll take that. So, I mean, all in all, very happy. But I also think that once we get through, mid-August, toward the end of August, and the kids get back to school, I think it's going to break out. I really do. I don't think people in this country are sitting around hoping for another 4 years of this misery. And I think that we can do a better job in really highlighting something that I think is important for this country, which is that there are a lot of people that voted for Barack Obama, and these people, and a lot of them, are very disappointed with how things have turned out. And I think that we need to get that message, that man-on-the-street message out in this campaign, showing how people's lives have been affected, and what the disparity is between the promises of Obama of 2008 and the realities of where we're at in 2012. I think if we do that effectively, and we really put on the ballot what this election is about, I think we're going to win.
All right, so the presidential election, let's take that aside for a moment. House looks like it's in pretty good shape for Republicans to hold on to the House.
Right.
A heavier lift, I think you will agree, in the United States Senate for Republicans to prevail there. I can see a scenario where that might happen, but it looks like a pretty heavy lift. What do you think?
Well, it's always a heavy lift to flip a majority, so, I'll give you that. But I think if you really do break it down, though, and start to look at the map, and where are we, where are we going outside of the battleground states on the Senate? Because I think in the battleground states, I think we can intelligently agree that the top of the ticket is going to drive almost the entire ballot below. So, for example, in Virginia, where a lot of our listeners are at this morning,
right.
If Obama, if Romney wins Virginia, I would almost guarantee you that George Allen wins Virginia. If Obama wins Virginia, I think it's going to be tough.
Are you worried, sir, about Virgil Goode?
No, I'm not worried about Virgil Goode. But let me get back to this other issue. But if you look at outside the battleground states in the Senate, you go to Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska, Missouri, and then there's Linda Lingle out in Hawaii that's doing very well. The nice thing about where we're at on the Republican side in the Senate is that we have tremendous opportunities outside the battleground states. And then we win Virginia, we win a place like Florida, and you win in a place like Ohio. All of those candidates are almost guaranteed to win. So I feel good about that. Now, back to your Virgil Goode. No, I think people understand out there what it means, what the election's about. It's about Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and Virginia is the linchpin to the map. And I just think that it's critical, and I think that we're going to do a pretty good job of making sure that every voter in Virginia understands that the choice is American Dream, Obamacare, cradle to grave, take your pick.
All right.
And that's going to be what it's going to be about.
We had Senator Jim DeMint on the program not too long ago, and he said, about this whole extending the Bush tax cuts, to do it for those under $250,000 or for everybody. He said, what we should do? We should just fund the government through the end of the year into next year, let the tax cuts expire, and when we win in November, then we'll fix it, when Congress gets back in session in, say, late January or early February, but allow the taxes to go up. Are you willing to take that risk? Do you think that's a smart strategy, or do you think that somehow it has to be done either right after the election or perhaps even before the election?
Well, I'm not going to quarrel with Jim DeMint on the air here, but he's a very smart man, and I sure do respect him and looked up to him. But boy, I think you got to get it. I think you should try to get it done, but I certainly expect us to be able to win in November. So, our problem with this tax question is that, the president's talking about, paying a fair share. You're making over $250, you should pay a fair share. The problem is, as you know, you're affecting about 840,000 small businesses that file
Right.
as individuals. That's the big problem. The second problem is it's just more fundamental than that we don't talk about enough. There is no amount of money that you can collect from people that make over $250,000 or even $100,000 that can run the federal government and keep up with the size of what we've created. So, for example, if you collect, forget about the Buffett rule at 30%. Let's just make it 100%. If you collect 100% of every dollar that every person in America makes over $100,000, you take it all and you send it to Washington, you'd run the government for about 35 days. So there's no amount of money that you can take from people that can run this government that we've created. So we have to reduce the size of government.
All right.
That's a bigger problem.
We'll leave it there. Reince Priebus, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it greatly.
Guys.
Always good to have you.